Hello, welcome to the film and TV injury iceberg. If you've seen any of my videos before, this iceberg video is a little bit slower, so maybe it's a little more relaxing for you. Feel free to watch this when you're working and I distract you, maybe sleeping, reading a book, and I'm kind of the background noise. This video is mostly me being an unimportant figure, talking about some of the most crazy yet chaotic and also really interesting film and TV injuries across media. Tier 1, we have minor injuries. These could be anywhere from sprains to little muscle pulls, nothing really crazy, stuff with their skin. This is like intermediate, you know, you're a stunt actor, maybe a little ouchy, but nothing crazy. We have Kickass 2. So the premise of Kickass 2 is it's kind of a spoof on superhero movies where superheroes in the world don't actually exist, because in reality superheroes don't exist, and one person, Kickass himself, wants to kind of be that superhero. So he's kind of inspired by superheroes, but it's not inherently a superhero movie, and that's why it's kind of funny. It's a spoof. It's genuinely a funny, humorous movie, but the stunts in there are pretty insane, most insanely like a regular superhero movie would be. It's just cool and funny to see people in this movie who aren't like Iron Man or Superman taking down criminals and performing cool stunts. And performing cool stunts falls under the line of our first victim. Chloe Grace Moretz in the movie, I think she played Hit Girl. Fact check me, movie lovers, but she played Hit Girl. She, as an actress, wanted to perform her own stunts, which was pretty mind-blowing for a girl of her age. She was like preteen era, and she wanted to perform all her own stunts. So the set crew was a little nervous because, doing, fight scenes like this are not easy to do, and you can easily sprain and pull a muscle. And she did talk about in interviews how, it was physically taxing, some sprains, little muscle fatigue here and there from doing stunts. And so that's just like an easy one. However, I do have a fun little fact. So we have a minor injury, sprain. She's sore from doing the stunts, but we do have a little bit of a crazy one. When she was doing many stunts on her own, there were obviously some stunts that she could not do, so she did have a stunt double. And that stunt double, while they were somewhere on a hydraulic press, the operating team missed the mark on how far back they were supposed to push it, and her stunt double cracked her head on a pipe, which is, kind of insane that, Chloe got to do all these stunts in the movie, and she was mostly fine. And the one stunt, or the one batch of stunts that was like, you needed a stunt double, she cracked her head. Kind of insane. Split her head, but, you get some stitches, you bleed a little bit, you're all good. Next, we have The Masked Singer, and this was a UK TV show where people would, like, dress up in, like, funky outfits, sing a little song, and the judges would have to guess who the singer was. I think we all seen The Masked Singer before. So many celebrities are on it. I think one of the biggest ones was T-Pain. When T-Pain was on The Masked Singer, that was pretty crazy. But one of the performers got a little bit of an injury, but it wasn't on set, so I don't know if I can truly count it as film and TV. The celebrity is John Barrowman. I don't actually know who John Barrowman is. I'm assuming it's UK based, so I'm not gonna get into the specifics because most of my audience is going to be America. He explained on BBC Breakfast that it wasn't actually a show that he was filming for, but he was working and doing a dance move called the Death Drop. I'm gonna put a video on screen to show what the Death Drop is, and he did it the wrong way, and he like kind of twisted and hurt his neck in some certain way, and the next morning he woke up in excruciating pain that he like physically literally could not move, and so he was immediately sent to the emergency room, hospitalized. Bro effed up his neck, okay, right before trying to do The Masked Singer. Bro, come on.
It's morning and I'm going in for my injection, so I'll let you know how it goes.
He was also forced, because of his neck pain, to cancel a whole tour that he was doing, like a whole Christmas tour that he was performing at. And he had to cancel all those because the neck pain got so bad. So it's just really a lesson that when filming TV or filming movies and stuff, your body is a temple. It has to be at its most performance peak. If you're doing things that could jeopardize your health in any way, know the consequences are, not being able to do your job, which can fall under the line of any job. Acting or being at least in a TV show, you got to make sure you're fully healthy, because when you lose this, it's not like you can just like go into work the next week. The show is either passed on or the tour tickets have already either sold or been refunded, and you got to find another gig. Next, we have a horror movie. I'm sure I got some horror lover fans out there. You guys love the OG movies. We have Carrie, written by Stephen King, but, made into a movie. A pretty good movie for this time frame, honestly. A lot of practical effects and a lot of very interesting effects to be used throughout the movie to really display how the book was made. Carrie is a shy high school girl raised by a very strict religious mother, and because of that, and just because of the shyness of her, she was bullied in high school. Not many people liked her. Weirdo kid, the vibes, and she magically kind of discovered these telekinetic powers that kind of made her a person that wasn't so shy to begin with anymore, because she figured out she was actually a lot more stronger than she truly knew she was. The story builds, it's your classic horror movie. There's a big suspense. There's there's consequences. There's action. There's the infamous prom scene with all the pig's blood. Everyone knows that scene, and everyone knows the pig's blood fact primarily. And the actor insisted, put me in pig's blood. I want to be in real pig's blood. I want to method act. There's also kind of some facts that she slept in the pig's blood for days, and that kind of got debunked. It's not really a true fact, but it's speculated. So she was definitely trying to method act the most she could. And so the director was I don't really think we should do pig's blood. I'll do Caro syrup. I'll do some thick sugary syrup. And for the people who don't know, pig's blood, a very loose, thin liquid, would just wash right off. And so for the production and filming and stuff, it wouldn't necessarily stick the way that the audience would want it to be. It's she's covered in blood. It would keep it would seep into her skin a little bit less, and it would drip off really fast. So using Caro syrup, using high fructose corn syrup dyed red, allowed for the blood to truly stick to her body and kind of bask in that true horror. The downside of that is sugary syrup is really thick, and it's not just going to wash off with a single shower. So we can imply that Carrie washing, or the actor of Carrie, Sissy, in order to wash that off, very thick showers, very long showers, and a lot of skin irritation. Leaving that amount of sugar on your body for that long, for that many takes, and then having to aggressively rub it off is definitely not good for your skin. And that was definitely a thing that I noticed when watching the film, and also hearing about it, is this is not gonna be irritation-free syrup. And if you're watching this far and you're thinking, dude, so far we've had a sprained wrist, but then someone cracked their head, and then we had syrup skin irritation. Do you have another good one? Bro, I've got another good one. In 2013, an interview with PJ Souls, the person who plays Norma, in a scene where she was blasted with a hose in the film, when the hose blasted her in the ear, it broke her eardrum. You heard me right. It broke her literal eardrum. The fact that the pressure was so much hitting her in the head, it blasted at the proper structure that it hit the inside of her ear and shot out, completely broke her eardrum. Now, when you break an eardrum, loud pop, lots of ringing, and excruciating pain, because it's your ear connected to your brain. So the fact that one of the most talked about scenes is that Carrie and Pig's blood scene. Oh, it's not really talked about often is the hose blasting eardrum breaking scene. Yeah, kind of insane. I guess the benefit of that is in the movie, when it happened, it looked real because it completely was real. You lose all your equilibrium, kind of distorted, and it looked like she was really in pain because she was. Next, we got a little fun one. Everyone likes a little comedy, likes a little slapstick. We have Home Alone 2. Everyone practically knows the whole trilogy, or at least 2 movies of Home Alone 2. I wish they did a trilogy. The rebrands suck. Don't fight me on that. They suck. Anytime someone tries to remake anything without Kevin McAllister, it's ass. But the Home Alone 2 effects were mostly camera perspective effects, and also just basic effects, when I got hit over the head with a shovel, it wasn't real. It was a fake shovel. Let's be real here. But Home Alone 2, Joe Pesci was put under to do an effect that was very much real. And safety precautions were taken, but you can't take all safety precautions to ensure a perfect shot. So the scene where his head was lit on fire, I think in the first movie that was a perspective thing. There was a flaming hat farther closer to the camera, and then Joe Pesci was behind it, so it looked like his head was truly on fire, when it was getting sprayed. But as tech evolves and as fire technicians kind of get better at their job, they decided to do the scene where his head's on fire in Home Alone 2, for realsies, properly displaying on his hat and properly putting material so it wouldn't seep into his skin. But you got to understand, doing that shot, you're not just doing it in one take, because now that you have the safety behind it, you can kind of do multiple takes. He claimed in an interview that it really did give him real burns on his head and his scalp, and that is a really sensitive place, especially because he's bald. It's not like he burned off his hair, and he's like, oh I lost my hair. It was directly to his skin, directly to his cranium, right where again his brain is. A kind of serious injury. But it's not talked about, I think, because of how comedic and successful the movie was. Everyone is kind of like, oh, Joe, haha, yeah, you burned your head. Makes you wonder and makes you think that like all the booby trap scenes in Home Alone weren't all movie magic. And that is kind of like the first step into film and TV when they started to get into practical stunts. This was definitely one of the moments where it's like, maybe hopefully these computers get better so you don't have to light a super famous actor's head on fire and give him burns on his scalp. But that's just me. All right, tier 1 is done. The minor injuries are out the way. The boring part, these injuries suck. Right now, we're going a little deeper. You're like, hold on, what could be better than this? We're stretching to unconscious injuries. Little boo-boo on the head, little out, you know what I'm saying? Little fainting goat memo, little like, ooh, you know what I'm saying? Let's get into it. We have a classic trilogy, a real trilogy, a classic, Back to the Future. If you haven't seen the first 2 Back to the Future movies, I would, recommend watching them. I'll tell you the basic of the synopsis on Back to the Future 3 without spoiling. I'd highly recommend watching Back to the Future 1 and 2. If you haven't, what are you doing? Essentially, the synopsis of Back to the Future 3 is it takes place in the Wild West, initially where they travel to back in time, because Marty McFly wants to rescue Doc Brown, and they got to try to find a way to fix the DeLorean to get back into present time and kind of end the whole trilogy, kind of end it in like the best way they can. The simplest thing I can say without spoiling it, because it's honestly a great ending to the whole trilogy. Back to the Future is one of the few movies that I think truly executed a really good 1, 2, 3 movie. I think 2 got a little bit of flack, but I think 2s in movies always get a little bit of flack. But then everyone loved 3. And so 1 was like this incredible memory, and then it took a little bit of time for people to warm up to 2, and then 3 was like amazing because it was like the ending of the trilogy, and they tried to make everything perfect. With this scene, Michael J. Fox wanted to do his own stunts because, again, a lot of times actors want the movie to feel real. They don't want people to think that they had stunt doubles throughout the whole thing and, pointing out, oh, this was fake. This scene wasn't real. Michael J. Fox, you weren't actually here in this scene. And it was a classic hanging scene from high up, and he didn't want to have his safety box below. He wanted to keep his hands between the noose and his neck instead of the safety box that was there, to kind of keep himself up properly and kind of add for an interesting, scene. However, on the third take of doing this, because, in movies, when you get a good take, the director always wants a pickup take, and then even a third, just in case, to ensure A, they got it, and B, like the actor wasn't making any weird faces that they didn't like in that first take. He misplaced the judgment of his hand while he was hanging, and it actually tightened the noose as he was holding on, and it cut off circulation to his cardioid artery, and he was out within seconds. So obviously, they stopped production and filming, helped him, he's back. But when you pass out like that, especially from, an artery like that, you do lose a lot of your brain. The damage is really difficult when you're passing out to a degree of that. Sometimes when it's like passing out of like dehydration or anything like that, it is the brain. But when you cut off that sort of apparatus from connecting from here to your brain, if he was out any longer, he would have like more irreversible brain damage than sadly he already does with like the Parkinson's he has and everything. I doubt it had anything to do with the Parkinson's. Obviously that just happened, sadly. But had he been cut off for longer, I think we would have seen more, irreversible damage. Next we have Charlie's Angels. And Charlie Angels is a detective show. It's kind of more for like high-tech criminals. There's these detectives that, take down high-tech criminals, and it's kind of this like stylish, action-packed show. I wouldn't say it's as like detective and theory-based like an SVU would be. This is definitely more on like the action-packed side. So with action, there can be case used for injuries, unconscious injuries for that matter. And this injury was a very sad one because it's a mixed case use of drugs and just poor communication on the production standpoint. For one, not knowing of the illicit drug use, and for B, just not communicating the actual proper stunt coordination, rules and regulations. So essentially the scene took place in the Indian Dunes where they had to jump out of a moving car. Pretty easy one because the stunt driver is supposed to slow down. And the camera will do some work with like zooms and cuts to ensure that it looks like it's at the same pace, and they jump out and, it's a cool scene. So it mostly relies on the stunt driver slowing down. However, the stunt driver was on cocaine and did not slow down that much. And when they jumped out, one of the stunt actors got a concussion because, you're jumping out of a real moving vehicle as opposed to a coordinated, slowed down moving vehicle. And then the other stunt person who jumped out was knocked out, remained unconscious, and one of the coordinators had to rush to them to prevent them from moving to, ensure that they weren't damaging themselves more. Because when you get knocked out and you get unconscious, the last thing your body wants to do is obviously put you in more pain, but your brain's also struggling and fighting to get up and fight it and, get back to life. But when you hurt your body that much, the best thing you can do is stay still to prevent any further injuries of like broken bones or fractures or, worsening of bones. Because, when a bone is broken or a joint is displaced or a fracture has occurred, moving just allows that separation and that gap to grow. And it worsens it. So again, I'm not saying that's exactly what happened. I'm just giving some, unsolicited medical advice. Stop moving. You break something. Jesus Christ, get a cast, please. And thank you. But yeah, that just shows one of the, sad moments of film and TV, especially early film and TV when actors and even people were addicted to cocaine. It was a true epidemic, a very rich person epidemic, because it wasn't crack cocaine. It was pure cocaine. So there was no actual like overdosing in the world of Hollywood, but it was so common. It was like drinking. It's like, I'm just gonna do a line for this scene. So I'm like focused, like Adderall ? I don't know. Kind of sad that these stunt people were just doing their job and on an enclosed set, filming properly, the driver led to their demise. Pretty shitty injury. Wow, this next one is crazy because this next one is Kill Bill Volume 2. If you haven't seen Kill Bill 1, good ass movie. Quentin Tarantino is an incredible director. Really knows how to make a crazy story, quests and character, dialogue synopses. I don't even know if synopsis is a word. Synopsises, but that seems ridiculous. He's good at making a giant spider web, which leads to a lot of mishap because when you have a lot of things moving at once and a lot of running things and a lot of, things that can go wrong, they eventually will go wrong. And they did in Kill Bill Volume 2. But if you haven't seen Kill Bill Volume 1 and you want a little synopsis on 2 just to keep you updated, I got you. The bride, Uma Thurman, aka Beatrix Kiddo, continues her quest for revenge against her former assassin squad. She confronts her past allies like Bud and Ellie Driver on her way to Bill. The story delves into her backstory a little bit more, motherhood, and her basic martial arts discipline, how she got where she was to be this trained. It's a little bit of a slower, more emotional counterpart to Volume 1 because I think once you do a movie that is so action-packed and so like telling of that kind of story, the version 2 cannot be the same style. You have to dive into, actual character acknowledgement and actual like character history. Because if you just do 1 and 2 the same, it's just going to be like, bro, I could watch 1 or 2. So 2 is kind of like the boringer one because it like delves into a little bit more of like the thematics and like the storyline. And 1 is just like awesome because it's just action packed. But 2 was still action packed. And that's where we get into what went wrong. Because they were filming in Mexico and Uma Thurman was hesitant to do a car scene, nervous about the conditions of the car itself. It just was kind of like a death box, she exclaimed. And the windy roads, and it just wasn't, she wasn't really desiring to do it. I don't know why we didn't have a stunt double on that set. I say we like I was on set. I don't know why they had a stunt double on set, but Quentin was a little furious by the delay of her being like, I don't know if I want to do it. So he was just like, just do it. You'll be fine. Just do it. And knowing Quentin Tarantino, I'm sure that's exactly how it happened. I'm sure he just wanted the scene to get done because he had a million different other things going on in his brain. And he probably was like, I need you in this scene because I want to do it this certain way. And Quentin has always been a way of like being like, I just want to do this scene and I want it to be great and I love feet. So I think he just was like, just get in the death box. Yeah. So her thoughts were right about the car being a death box. Loose seatbelt. The car wasn't really like built well. And as she was driving, she lost control during the scene and slammed right into a palm tree. Got a concussion, a knee injury, screwed up her shoulder. But one of the bigger parts of this injury doesn't directly lie on the concussion or the physical injury, but more of the emotional injury and the emotional toll that Quentin had on her. She had advised Quentin that she did not want to do this. I don't want to do this scene. And, even with, Quentin, like, reassurance, being like, you're going to be fine. Just get in the car. It's fine. Just get in the car and do it. It left them, like, in kind of a standstill. Like, she was really upset. And it led to a lot of controversy and drama. A lot of articles were made about it, made headlines. It was a crazy story for the time. And Quentin at first was like, I'm sure PR people and people in film were like, you cannot release this footage. Like, this is bad. Like, we can sweep this under the rug. Like, I know the articles are bad, but like, we can figure this out. With that footage, it was definitely swept under the rug as a production was trying to do a cover up in Thurman's views. And they were only going to, give her the clip if she signed a release to like never talk about it. And then she went public with the clip. I'm assuming she signed it and then just like broke contract, or she somehow got a hold of it and went public with it, talking about how they wanted to use this as a media cover up. And Quentin, being the very stand-up person he was, handed over the footage to her and admitted that it was one of the biggest mistakes in his career, which is a very big win on Quentin. Next, we have a little bit of an older movie, pretty old, 1920s, The 11th Hour, made in 1923. Wow. So the topic of The 11th Hour is it's a courageous young man must protect a woman from sinister forces. Wow, what a classic film trope. It's a classic silent era adventure. There's like thrilling moments, there's romance, it's like your basic like film, I would say. So yeah, I could like break down the whole synopsis, but I don't want to bore you. So The 11th Hour, there's a scene where a plane gets shot down by a submarine and the actor is forced to use a parachute, so it's like one of those, action-packed climactic moments. So the plane needs to be rigged with explosives, and they're going to be set on a timer because back then there were no like wireless transmitters for explosives. So it was one of those things where it's like, hey, we're going to set these explosives on like a 10-second delay, action, jump out, and then that scene will look awesome. But the actor for the scene, Dick Kerwood, really got injured from this scene because apparently the explosives, just like the most important part of the scene, were rigged on a faulty timer. So Dick is like, okay, 10 seconds, action, I got to jump out, parachute, whatever, get this scene done. Nope. Boom. Plane fucking explodes. Flies him out of it, unconscious, because bro was in a plane that just exploded. Your one job on set is a timer. Set up the timer for 10 seconds, and you mess it up. It was a faulty timer. What does it even mean? It was like opposite day when you were setting the clock. Whatever. A piece of the plane, the wing itself, struck him and regained him consciousness. It's so funny that a massive hit knocked him out and another hit woke him up. Pretty miraculous. So he was able to, use his parachute. There was some things in the air, gasoline, fire, shrapnel. So that definitely wasn't making the scene any easier, because when you think about it, he's supposed to get shot out, jump out, and then when it explodes, it's almost as if the shrapnel is in the other direction of where he's jumping, because, it'll not be right in him. Pause. But he was okay. And it was one of those moments in film when, the safety technicians and the safety precautions really needed to go up if you're going to do a practical effect. The thing with CGI is you can think and dream of anything and kind of just go with the flow and be like, I want this, this, and this, and we don't need to like precautionary it. But if you want to do practical, especially in 1920 when there was no really precautions, it was just like, we're filming movies, we're doing stuff. Yeah, it definitely was probably one of those first pillars of needing safety precautions for practical stunts. And I think what's crazy is just a year later, in 1924, Dick Kerwood died from falling off a rope ladder while doing another film. Things like that shock me a lot because he managed to survive a plane explosion with his parachute catching on fire, but falling off a rope ladder killed him. The body is just, the body is very insane sometimes, especially in going and enduring stunts like this. Okay, we are at the halfway point of the iceberg. We're at tier 3. And tier 1 was like, ouchie on the body. Tier 2 was like, ooh, the body hurts so much that it knocked me out. Now we're getting to a little bit more of a little higher of a pain tolerance. Something where the actors felt this, but they weren't going to get knocked out, so they were going to stop feeling it, and it wasn't going to be a small enough of pain where they could just walk it off. We're diving into cuts. So if you're a little squeamish, I'll make sure to provide details that are not excruciating. But you know, the most infamous cut scene in film, I think, is a fairly recent one, and it's talked about a lot because of the actor in which they endured the pain and continued the scene. Talking about Django Unchained, another Quentin Tarantino movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. The movie The Django Unchained stars Jamie Foxx, Leonardo DiCaprio, tons of other people, and he's a freed slave, Jamie Foxx is, and he teams up with a bounty hunter. They pursue outlaws and eventually decide to go look for Django's wife. I mean, it kind of is just this classic slave freeing movie, like in the time period, but it's documented and filmed like a Western. It's this weird character back and forth where it's definitely filmed in the era when slaves were around, but the dialect and work and formulation is almost of a Western, and it's just really cool. So I highly recommend watching the movie. It's good. It's very vulgar. So if you can't watch it like in front of your parents, or maybe you can, maybe you got cool parents. That'd be awesome if I could watch Django Unchained with my mama and papa. So during a dinner scene, Leonardo DiCaprio's character got heated in the scene and smashed his hand on the table. And when he smashed his hand on the table, like kind of doing a pound movement, shattered a glass, and that glass like cut him. A lot of slits in his hand. And so, you know, during that scene, Leo had the choice of like being like, "Oh, guys, I cut my hand. Can we just do a retake?" Like, I'm in like Jesus. Why did we not have sugar glass? Why was this real glass on the thing? And I think it was probably real glass because he wasn't supposed to break it, and also because I think Quentin Tarantino is a more practical director than, you know, a super CGI director. Even though there are some scenes that are CGI for sure. And so when he broke the glass, he decided to completely stay in character, and that take was so impactful that Quentin made that the original take and kept that in the original film. And of course, you know, after the scene was cut, Leo was in a ton of pain, you know, multiple cuts on his hand and, you know, bleeding a ton and a ton of pain, glass shards stuck in his skin. I mean, it was definitely not an easy injury to follow suit with. But the reason why this injury is so important is because it shows a natural injury that would have happened potentially in real life, and how it was carried through is obviously dramatized because it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, but it shows the perseverance and, you know, the lengths that Leo was willing to go in that scene to make it believable and make it like interesting and cool. And I know cool is not a great descriptive word, but it was cool. And, you know, after the cameras cut, you know, a standing applause was reportedly happened because that was an incredible scene. What was interesting about those two scenes is the twistedness of smearing the blood all over Kerry Washington's face. The slave in question was switched to prop blood. When I would always see that scene, I would see that detail, the smashing of the hand and then smearing the blood. And I think it's cool that they switched to fake blood because it shows the humility in being like, look, we got this incredible raw real scene. Let's amp it, but let's be, you know, precautious and, you know, nice to the other actress that is going to get blood smeared on her face. Let's make it fake, which was a cool detail because it shows the, like I said, the humility, but also like Leo was willing to go lengths to create a good scene. And then everyone else in the director's room and like the room on set was like, wait, how can we even make this better while still pretending respect to other people on set? And so in this like twisted, flourish manner, you see these two scenes. And then when you find out that the blood was real, your brain immediately goes to everything was real. And it's just cool because it wasn't real, but it's cool that the brain does that when they hear like a little tidbit of information about like, this was real. It's like, was that real too? Obviously, no, but I think really cool nonetheless. Next, we have The Avengers, the original Avengers movie made in 2012. Do I really need to give you a synopsis on the Avengers movie? Probably not. So I'm just not gonna give it. I mean, all the other ones I could like understand because they're a little more niche movies, but the Avengers, I've seen the Avengers like 5 or 6 times. You've had to have seen like a clip on YouTube of the Avengers. You know who they all are. You know the storyline. You know that intro scene where they're all in the city and they're causing havoc and Hulk slams Loki a bunch. You guys can gather what the Avengers are. I'm going to save you the synopsis. I'm going to get into the injury. One of the Avengers stuntmen, Jeremy Fitzgerald, was performing a weirdly regular stunt, 30-foot drop, which is a relatively normal, you know, height and set stuntman scene. It's kind of like one of the quintessential ones, a fall, a drop, nothing too complicated, but, you know, still risky. And this was definitely a high risk scene. As he fell, his foot got caught, yanking him to fall into a brick wall and hitting his head. And so a lot of people think to that nature, like, oh, like a concussion, right? No, it like tore off a piece of his scalp. That kind of scrape, that pull from falling and hitting your head on a brick wall with that kind of texture. It's not as much as like, oh, he fell and like hit his head on the ground and like concussion or like knocked out. But this was like a scrape, cut, pull injury. I think what's weird about this one is that this is one of the first films that used a heavy amount of CGI. And so a 30-foot drop to them probably didn't seem like much. They didn't need to do the CGI for it, just use a stuntman. But it also goes to show that even in newer ages of film, directors and people are likely still going to want to use practical effects because practical looks better. You can never truly computer generate an image that is perfect or real-like. Okay, next we have Fury, made in 2014. The synopsis of Fury is Don War Daddy Collier, played by Brad Pitt, commands a Sherman tank crew during World War II. As Allies push into Nazi Germany, a young new recruit joins the hardened team. The soldiers face brutal combat and moral decisions. It's kind of just your classic gritty, intense war film. There's nothing like crazy about it, except that it's like World War II, and it's like the interestingness of it is like the team involved is the only part that's interesting. And kind of on the same thing as like Saving Private Ryan. It's like the team that is interesting. The war itself is not the, interesting part per se. But yet one of the scenes in the film was a bayonet scene where, actors had to use guns with bayonets attached to them. So in production and rehearsal, they needed to practice doing the scene and working it back and forth. And for some reason, they decided to use real metal bayonets for the scene. I don't understand the practicalness of this because you could have used rubber that was shiny enough or, maybe not metal. Maybe they were using like plexiglass or, like a hardened plastic, but, rubber I think would have been efficient. Prop film nerds roast me and tell me why rubber bayonets would have not been good back then. Maybe they weren't designed as well. Maybe they didn't look as real. I don't know, but insane. But during a rehearsal combat scene, a 35-year-old stuntman stabbed another seasoned stuntman in the shoulder with the bayonet. And it warranted, a harsh enough injury that they had to get airlift, to the hospital because, when you get stabbed in the shoulder with a bayonet attached to a rifle, it's probably not as bad as a knife. It's probably worse because of all that force and pressure. But the stuntman seemed to be good. He was like laughing, chatting up on the aircraft on the way to the hospital. It seemed that it was just a very bad mistake on two seasoned stunt actors. Just shows the anything can happen mentality, even production. Things can happen during the scene, but things can also even happen before the scene even starts in like pre-production. I don't know if I could imagine getting stabbed in the shoulder and on an airlift cracking jokes. I feel like I would be screaming, crying, and throwing up. But that's just me. I'm a little wuss. Yeah, and another stunt in this film that wasn't directly a stunt that was an accident or anything that was like, oh, this person did this and it wasn't supposed to happen. Shia LaBeouf actually took the method acting on this film to a very creepy level, in my opinion, by cutting his face up and reopening wounds to make them look fresh on set. I think is a form of method acting that I was not anticipating Shia to have. I know he's always been kind of a character and kind of outlandish in the way of making sure the films that he's in are like great and like well respected, but to mangle your own face and to reopen those wounds, let alone in between takes and days to ensure that your face looks like it's really cut up because it is, I think is a little insane. He also had a tooth pulled for the film to make it look real. I could do a whole Iceberg on like method acting horror stories. It could definitely be cool as well. So if you guys would like that one, I'll definitely make that. But this art of method acting where you're an actor putting yourself in excruciating pain to make the movie feel real, it's just such a weird teeter-totter to me of like what is good for the production and what is good for your own health. Nonetheless, very cool, but a self-inflicted cut and slice incident on the film Fury. And for our final instance of cut and slice in the film and TV injury iceberg, we have an iconic movie with the GOAT. People are thinking like, what? Who's the GOAT? Bro, Tom Hanks in Castaway. Castaway is such a good movie because it portrays so many different character themes of pure isolation and like going insane. It's one of the few movies that was kind of released newer, even though I know it was like in the 2000s. It felt very new for audiences because we've kind of seen the Stranded on Desert Island character theme, and it's been adopted in many, many years. But I still think Castaway was ahead of its time, even though it's 25 years old. But one of the incidents in one of the scenes truly left people scarred, to say the least. But essentially the synopsis of Castaway, for those who have not seen it. Chuck Noland, played by Tom Hanks, is a FedEx executive who survives a plane crash and washes up on a deserted island. He must learn to survive alone, again, that classic isolation trope. Both physically and emotionally, it's also this comparison of insanity versus like true survival, because he has a companion who is a volleyball named Wilson, and it's just a gripping tale of like classic isolation in films, but also that like resilience to keep going day to day, where it's like he's losing his mind, he has a best friend, it's a volleyball. He was good looking though, that volleyball. You know what I'm saying? That was a good looking volleyball. So on set, when you're filming on a desert island, you want things to be practical. Filming on a giant enclosed set for all of the scenes, when you could just go to a deserted island, and film, likely you're going to want to go for the more practical route, because CGIing back then was not at all fluent. So they just obviously shot on location. And Tom Hanks seemed to have suffered from a minor leg cut because, you know, the shrubbery, you know, the trees around them, there's bushes, there's, you know, sticks and stuff. Suffered just a minor cut, you know, nothing too bad. Everyone on set was like, oh, you're fine. We'll take you to, get bandaged up and, you'll be fine. But days later, it turned so serious because he got a staph infection. It was like not at all a minor cut. He was in there for 3 days receiving treatment. And the doctor was like, if you waited any longer, you would have died from a simple cut. Production shut down for 3 weeks to ensure that he had a full recovery, and they, went back to filming. But it just shows that like even the smallest incident, not as big as Leonardo DiCaprio with the glass smashing, not as bad as Shia LaBeouf cutting his face up, a simple leg cut, seems like nothing, let's keep filming, led to a staph infection for you needing to be in the hospital for 3 days and almost dying. Because we go back to that thing, actors, your body is a temple. You need to make sure you're fully healthy. And this was one of those moments of like, maybe when something happens in a location that people aren't aware of, even though it's minor, we should still check that shit out. Just get it checked out. Insane. Absolutely insane. All right. Welcome to Tier 4, where we're kind of getting into a little subtopic. Still on the relation of, injuries, but a little subgenre. We're dipping into animal related. Little kitty cat. Little animal related, okay? And if you noticed, the white tee is now a navy tee to let you know that some time has passed. But I'm still dedicated to getting this video out. Can't just sit in a white t-shirt for 8 days straight researching for you guys and, without going insane. Today we have a show from 2014 called Top Gear, starring Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond, and James May. They test out cars and do outrageous challenges while doing so. You're probably thinking, what does this have to do with a car or an animal? And what I will say is it has nothing to do with the car and everything to do with a horse. But you're probably thinking, where's the horse? I'm going to get into that. During the filming of Top Gear's 2014 Christmas special, they were in the Patagonias, and James May was on a horse for like a little horse segment. I don't know, maybe stopping for cars and doing a, hey, let's look at this other animal, look at this other vehicle of transportation. The horse didn't mess with that and sent James May flying off the horse directly on his back. And yeah, it sounds like it hurts. Roll the clip.
Oh, that's not going well. Oh. That's not going well. You all right, mate? You all right? Stay still. You all right?
Yeah, so that was no joke fall. And horse falls are, they don't look that bad, mostly because the horse isn't that high up. But when you're actually up there, saddled up, and that horse leans back and you fall right on your back, that's a painful steep. That's a drop, okay? That's not just falling out of your bed. Horses are big. When you see a horse fall, you're kind of thinking like, ooh, that might have just like, ooh. That's what it feels like. It's like excruciating pain to fall off a horse like that. And a lot of the chaos of James May's injuries does continue to not just the horse fall, but they don't really classify under animal related. But for the sake of it, I'll list that he's had a hard time getting a back injury in Africa, concussion in the Middle East, and 3 cracked ribs along the way. Let's just say it isn't easy to be James May, and neither is it to be a horse launching him off.
Oh, that's not going well.
Next, we have an older film, Napoleon and Samantha from 1972. Napoleon, played by Johnny Whitaker, and Samantha, played by Jodie Foster, are 2 children who set out on a journey with a tame lion named Major. After losing his grandfather, Napoleon wants to avoid being taken to an orphanage. Their journey across the wilderness is filled with adventure and danger. It's a Disney family classic, to say the least. It just so happened that Jodie Foster was attacked by that same lion at the age of 9. 9? Are you kidding me? Imagine getting attacked by a lion at 9 years old. Hell, imagine getting attacked by a lion. Period. No matter the age. Because while they were filming on set, they had a substitute lion in because I presume that they were doing CGI for some of the film. Unless CGI was not that good to do lions, I'm assuming they did a real lion because she got attacked. Yikes. The lion was tethered by a hidden piano wire, obviously to make sure it didn't attack the actors, and it seemed like the lion became impatient with Jodie's actions or movements, maybe too many scenes in a row, maybe the lion was not actually tied straight to a piano wire like good enough. Because piano wire, it's invisible along the camera, so it can look like, the lion is there. It's like fishing line. It's untraceable when you're filming. And so, having a rope attached to it or anything stronger in 1972, when keying was maybe not the best or maybe took a long time, they went with a thinner, weaker wire, hoping the lion just wouldn't do anything bad. Don't know how you can assume a lion can do that. The lion picked her up by its mouth and just shook her like a rag doll. As the lion clamped down, Foster recalled the entire crew running away in panic. The only one who stayed was the actual trainer of the animal. Shocker, I mean, if there's a lion attack, I think everyone on set is going to run for their lives out of fear and adrenaline, but obviously the animal trainer is going to know what to do. So for people to make remarks about being like, why didn't no one go and save her? Like, you want the camera operator to run at a lion that is like mauling a 9-year-old? And when the trainer ran up, he said, drop it to the lion. And the lion obeyed, obviously, because it's an animal that's been trained. It had a vicious attack, but it wasn't anything that was like, it wasn't planned. So the lion obviously has training protocols about when to stop. So, but it's still bad.
There didn't seem to be much safety precautions with you and the lion.
No, I was 9 years old, and I was working with. There were 3 lions. There was one really old lion with no teeth, he was the actual lion we were supposed to be working with, and then there was a stunt lion who did all the crazy like rawr kind of stuff, and then there was the stand-in lion. So 3 lions. So I was working with the stand-in lion, and I guess he had a little, like a little piano wire that was pulling him, and we'd finish the take, and I was going up the hill, and all I remember is I remember seeing his mane come around, and then he picked me up sideways and shook me in his mouth, turned me around, and every single person on the crew was running, and they took their equipment too.
Foster was left with lasting scars on her back and stomach, and briefly lost consciousness, obviously getting picked up by a lion. Though she did make a full physical recovery, and she reportedly developed a fear for cats. Obviously, if I was attacked by a lion, I wouldn't even touch a Siamese or those bald-headed freaky. And that wouldn't even just because of lion. Those bitches are ugly. I think what's crazy is that there's a tier list of lions that are performative in shows. Like, we got this A-class lion who's like been to school and stuff on how to act. But Zamba's the best. But Zamba can't make it right now. He's got a pedicure. We got to bring in the below tier lion. I don't know. Crazy that there's a lion substitute list by any means. Next, we have Hotel Imperial from 1939. Anna, played by Issa Miranda, a chambermaid in a war-torn hotel, becomes entangled with a mysterious man on the run. As the soldier spies pass through, she navigates danger and secrets. It's like a tense wartime romance movie with some espionage. Strong female leads, classic drama. What more can you expect? While filming a cavalry charge for a period piece, actor Ray Milland, an experienced horseman, led a gallop through a village set. But something went wrong. Camera on a tripod that was left in the middle of the path that the cavalry charge was supposed to go after wasn't moved. And so the actor on the horse running through it, obviously the horse sees a massive tripod with a massive camera and hopes that they can gallop over it and falls, launches the actor across, and the actor slams into debris. I mean, what did people expect? Did they want this incredible shot with the tripod in the middle and the horse jumping over it? Yeah, maybe. It was probably supposed to be intentional. Obviously, before filming the set, they scanned the whole thing and were like, and this horse is going to jump over this. But my guess is that it was just an honest mistake. The tripod was there, and there was no time to, like, move it while the scene was going on. So they were, hoping for the best. The horse would jump over it, and they would, A, get a cool shot, but B, not have a disaster for the mistake they made by leaving a tripod with a camera back from that age were massive. Dude, imagine getting launched off a horse, let alone falling off a stationary horse like we learned in Top Gear. Imagine with a horse going very fast, leading a charge, and getting launched off that horse into debris. He was knocked out unconscious for nearly 24 hours, suffered a 3-inch gash to the head, which required 9 stitches, and a concussion and hand injuries, and he spent about 2 weeks in the hospital. man, that's awesome for a shot that they didn't need and a mistake that they shouldn't have made, because leading a shot that big, you should ensure that the whole entire place is cleared. Don't know if a PA was, having a croissant on break or taking a whiz, but imagine hurting your star actor because you forgot to move a tripod with a camera on it. Next, we have the movie Roar from 1981. Roar is a movie where a family moves into a house filled with untrained wild lions, tigers, and leopards, starring real family life members including Tippi Hedren and Melanie Griffith. The film is infamous for its real animal attacks. There's little plot, just survival amid chaos. It's one of the most dangerous productions in Hollywood history. Over 70 cast and crew members were injured during the making of this film. Around 150 lions, tigers, and big cats were used during this film. Though no one died, there was a lot of life-threatening injuries that could have come from this movie. Seeing as how dangerous the production already was, the actors enduring this much pain and this many injuries requiring over 100 to 220 stitches, leading to believe that this probably wasn't a good movie to make at all, and likely should have just been waiting until, I don't know, better CGI came into the production. 150 lions? You lying if you saying it's safe. Okay, I'm all done with those jokes. The weird irony behind the film is that the re-release tagline chillingly reads, "No animals were harmed during the making of Roar," but 70 members of cast and crew were. And that goes into debate of like, what's more valuable? Human life, animal life, you got vegans debating, it's a whole thing. But I would say 70 cast and crew is probably worth more life than 150 lions. Yeah. And welcome to the final tier of part 1 of this series, Broken Bones. We are at tier 6. The final tier, a little bit of a gruesome tier, as broken bones are kind of gross. I think everyone thinks about broken bones in movies as something, when it's done fictionally, it's like, oh no, he broke his bone, like, oh no, like it snapped, or oh no, like it's this like minor thing, like, or it's cool. Breaking a bone sucks. It's like a really bad injury to have. I don't think it's talked about enough severity-wise, because I think when it happens, like you just see the person in the cast, you didn't see the person break the bone and like it dislocate or it go the other way and snap and hear the giant crack that is usually made up with like cabbage and like mushy meat. No, real snapping. Mortal Kombat? Nah, this ain't like that. We have Citizen Kane from 1941. Citizen Kane is a movie about a journalist who investigates the life of media mogul Charles Foster Kane after his mysterious last word, Rosebud. Through interviews and flashbacks, a complex portrait of power and loneliness emerges. Orson Welles stars and directs a landmark in film and history, and a very prominent movie in the art of storytelling and directing. Everyone really knows the name Citizen Kane, and a lot of people have seen the film, but it's mostly like a timeless classic that people know the name of. It also influenced a lot of directors like Roman Polanski. We're not going to get into him. And the director himself, Orson Welles, actually took a fall on the set of Citizen Kane. During the filming of an intense chase scene, Orson Welles, portraying Charles Foster Kane, took a dangerous tumble falling 10 feet down a staircase. Yikes. The injury, not as bad as you'd expect. Welles just chipped an ankle bone. But that did delay production a bunch because your ankle bone is where you walk and it's one of the pinnacle parts of your body for moving. So it's not as bad as an arm or a knee or like your shoulder where you can kind of, position yourself in a better way for the actor to actually function during the film or just film up. Ankle is like your pinnacle of walking. You break an ankle, you're screwed. Think with an injury like this, oh my God, they would have to halt production. They like, dude, he chipped his ankle. That's you moving. Like, what are you gonna do? Nope. Bro just adapted immensely and directed the film for 2 weeks in a wheelchair. And for scenes requiring him to stand, Welles put on steel braces in order to keep going. The incident underscores the physical risks that filmmakers face even on iconic productions, and just highlights Welles' unwavering dedication to the craft of actually making this film. He didn't stop and say, well, I broke my ankle. I can't film the walking productions. I can't even direct. I'm just going to halt production for 3 to 6 weeks or, 6 to 8 weeks until I'm fully recovered and we'll get back to filming. He saw the vision of this film. He knew what it was going to be impactful to other filmmakers, including himself, and he decided to push through pain and agony and also just general discomfort. Next, we have Sherlock Jr. from 1924. A projectionist, played by Buster Keaton, dreams of becoming a detective. When he's falsely accused of theft, he imagines himself solving the case in a movie. The film blends with logic, stunts, and basic comedy. It's most importantly just one of those classic films, Sherlock Jr. It's not as notable as Sherlock Holmes, but you know, it's notable enough. Buster Keaton's near-fatal train accident is where one of these broken bones lead. While filming a daring scene, Buster Keaton grabbed a water spout atop of a moving train car, only to unexpectedly slam into the ground by the force of the water. He struck his head on a steel rail and briefly lost consciousness. Despite the pain and the severity of the injury, Keaton decided to keep filming and showed his incredible resilience to what just happened, and they successfully continued the film. Although Keaton did suffer from severe headaches, he really just thought that was likely just from the injury and also hitting his head, and really nothing more. But a shocking discovery years later, it wasn't until 1935, literally a decade after this stunt, that an x-ray revealed something different. The x-ray revealed that he had a callus on his top vertebrae, implying that he actually had broken his neck during this stunt, and he didn't even know it. This incident kind of just highlights the dedication that actors have to film, working through that injury to provide the best film possible. This is one of those instances where an actor endures physical pain but doesn't take the proper steps to get it checked out, and primarily just looks at it as, I bumped my head, even though it's kind of a bad injury, let's keep pushing and make this film. And even in back then, with the, you know, ideology of a man not looking really to be, you know, crying or ow, that hurt, really looking to be, you know, indestructible. Men back then, probably doing stunts and filming after something like that, probably had the, you know, motive to look like nothing ever happened. We're going a little bit in the future. We have Mission Impossible from 2018. Ethan Hunt, who was played by Tom Cruise, and his IMF team race to recover stolen plutonium. Faced with betrayal, they partner with CIA agent August Walker, played by Henry Cavill. The film features jaw-dropping stunts, there's twists, it's relentless action and very fast pacing. It's arguably one of the most intense action-packed series of like the last 2 decades. Unless you want to count like Fast and Furious, but Tom Cruise had a brutal ankle fracture on set. While filming a high-risk stunt in London that involved him leaping between 2 buildings, Tom Cruise fractured his ankle, didn't stop, and he pushed through the pain. Despite the injury, Cruise actually finished the take and just happened to limp off set after it was wrapped. Medical experts did urge him to keep weight off the ankle, warning that he might never run again and estimating a 6 to 9 month recovery had he been resting properly. Refusing to accept limitations, though, Cruise dedicated himself to grueling rehab, training 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week to truly encapsulate a speedy recovery. And a speedy recovery he did.
It's because I broke my ankle. We had to shut down. But we're about 6 weeks away.
The ankle. This is the... So are you fully recovered? Are you well?
It's still broken, but I'm doing well.
No, you're kidding. Is it still broken?
Yeah, I mean, it's not fully healed, but we're shooting.
But that's nuts, because we've seen a picture of you're running and doing all the stuff again.
I know.
Now,
but we have a release date, so we got to keep going. I just went. I said, "Sorry, guys, it's broken. You know, take me to the hospital. It's broken." That's a wrap. Everyone, crew got on the phone and.
Remarkably, he was only back to filming 6 to 7 weeks later. The fact that the doctors were saying he needed 6 to 9 months, the fact that he was able to recover in 6 to 7 weeks is kind of insane. Although the dedication of physical therapy and training for hours a day, every single day, 7 days a week is also grueling. And they were back to filming in 6 to 7 weeks, and Tom Cruise was actually sprinting and running all back again, healthy as can be, 12 weeks in after recovery. The actual injury was captured on film and included in the final cut and promotional materials, adding that raw authenticity to the Mission Impossible series of truly having action-packed moments. Obviously, the injury did cause an 8 to 9 week production delay because even though Tom Cruise took 6 or 7 weeks to recover, they obviously have to like re-get the gear and reschedule crew and production and get catering. And what I think this highlights is both the actor truly recovering and taking their job seriously to the point where it's like, look, I don't want a 6 to 9 month recovery. I want a like 2 to 3 month recovery, and I'm going to do everything I can possible to make sure that the audience gets this movie on time and not delayed because I made a misjudgment of a jump and made a mistake. But it also shows and highlights what a film production actually has to do. That 6 to 7 weeks turned into 8 to 9 weeks because they needed a week or two to get everyone back onto set, get all the cameras back and rented, get all the media back and rented, get all the people and employees working on the set back in because those people were gone for 8 to 9 weeks. Those people had jobs and they were out of a job for 8 to 9 weeks. I'm assuming there was some sort of back pay. You lose a lot, and a lot of moving pieces have to stop, and then you have to try to bring those pieces back and get them moving again. So not only does this touch upon the incredible recovery of Tom Cruise, but it also talks about the incredible recovery that the production houses actually have to make in order to get a film back in production. Now we go 8 years back to 2010. The Expendables, another great movie. Barney Ross, played by Sylvester Stallone, leads a crew of elite mercenaries, including Lee Christmas, played by Jason Statham, and Gunner, played by Dolph Lundgren, hired to overthrow a dictator. They uncover a deeper conspiracy, leading to explosions, fistfights, and this 80s style grit all around. It's kind of a throwback action fest, but for 2010 to have this kind of feeling of like 80s and 90s fighting action movies was kind of cool for the decade of like the early 2010s. And one of the lead actors, and probably one of the most iconic actors in history, Sylvester Stallone, suffered a neck injury. Why are we seeing so many neck injuries going on? Probably because the neck is like what's moving and looking, and you're moving a lot. And it's one of those things that you can probably injure easily depending on the stunt you're doing. He sustained a hairline fracture or cracked bone in his neck along with dislocated shoulders. To stabilize his neck, Stallone required the insertion of a metal plate. Several surgeries that reports to say up to 7 related to his injury and others from his action-packed career. The lasting effects is that Stallone has openly admitted that he never fully recovered from his neck fracture, and that the incident underscores the intense physical dangers actors face performing high-impact scenes, even for a veteran like Stallone. I mean, that holds so much truth and so much value because we've seen Stallone in the Rocky series, we've seen him in so many movies where he is the impossible force to break, and just so happens that he was broken. I mean, look at him in Rambo. He was insane. And a neck fracture and having multiple surgeries leading up to all this with all his other action movies that he's done, the fact that this neck injury showcased a moment where he was like, I really didn't ever fully recover from this. And it likely is that he didn't fully recover emotionally and mentally, and also because it's a physically enduring process to fully recover from a neck injury. Next, we have the movie Spartacus from 1960. Spartacus, played by Kirk Douglas, a slave trained as a gladiator, rises to lead a massive revolt against Rome. The film explores love, freedom, and defiance. Lawrence Oliver plays his Roman advisory, a sweeping historical epic movie with a ton of iconic scenes. The injury that occurred during Spartacus goes as follows. During an intense slave revolt scene, Kirk Douglas, Spartacus, was supposed to force Charles McGraw's villainous trainer, Marcellus, into a large pot of soup to drown him. But while filming, McGraw's jaw actually struck the edge of a cast iron pot and gave him a fractured jaw. Now, that might not seem like an incredible bone to break because it's not an arm, it's not your legs, it's not your neck. Fracturing your jaw, the bone that you use to move your mouth up and down, has to be probably one of the most excruciating things I can think of as we talk about this fracture. Imagine hitting your jaw on a cast iron pot, the rim of it, might I mention. A thinner part, but a smaller radius to where it's going to pinpoint that bone and that muscle and crack in a way that just hurts. It would be different if he hit his head on the pot. It'd be different if he, fell and hit like a bigger rim, like the lid of the pot, and like hit his bone and hit his jaw and it bruised a little bit. No, that fracture is impeding on a smaller part, actually pinpointing the placement of their jaw. Everyone feeling their jawbone right now. It's a thin bone. Your jawbone is not something that is, super strong. It uses to chew, but, when you feel your jawbone right here, this little piece right here, imagine just crushing that. And now everyone's gonna be like feeling their jaw, being like, oh my God, my jawbone is actually kind of thin. Despite the painful injury, McGraw kept going and finished the scene. And even stuntman Louis Elias, doubling for McGraw in a later take, also suffered a facial injury on the same exact pot. Though his injury was not as bad, he only needed 4 stitches. Who's this pot? Why is this pot out for vengeance right now? And why was this scene not like properly choreographed? If you have to be drowned in a pot of soup, why are we hitting the jaw like this? Why are we just it over? I don't know. I feel like there was some bad coordination on this set. We have Prison Break from 2017, the revival of Prison Break, to be specific. Years after Michael Scofield, played by Wentworth Miller, was presumed dead, clues surface suggesting that he's alive in a foreign prison. Lincoln, played by Dominic Purcell, and their old allies return to unravel the mystery. The revival brings new characters, threats, twists, codes, and escapes that define the series as it already once was. While filming in Morocco, an iron bar from a set piece became dislodged and struck Dominic Purcell right in the head. Purcell suffered a broken nose and multiple deep cuts on the head. One gash alone required 150 stitches. He also needed stitches on his elbow and his left eyebrow. For the medical response, he was airlifted to a hospital in Casablanca for urgent treatment. But despite the severity, Purcell remained in good spirits and was expected to make a full recovery. Purcell returned to filming relatively quickly, and the show also allowed his injury to be incorporated in the show to prevent continuity of an outfit change, of an entire scene change, and more importantly, just give the show a little more raw real because it truly happened. And this is just a great example of film scenes, even in controlled environments, having mishaps. You know, for a revival season like this, everything is ticked and checked to ensure that it's good. But anything like this, accidents happen and people get injured. One of the biggest things is that the fact that the show was able to look at this and go, okay, how can we incorporate this while still nodding that the injury was real and making it, you know, making sure that the actor made a full recovery, but how can we ensure that this doesn't hurt the actual series, but could actually strengthen it? And strengthen it did, because the character suffered a head injury and it matched up perfectly. We have a classic comedy movie, one of my favorites, honestly, an Adam Sandler original. We have Mr. Deeds from 2002. This is such a good film. I could go on and on talking about Adam Sandler movies, and I'm sure there are videos like about the Adam Sandler universe, but I don't want to get into that because that's not what this is. I'm trying to talk about Winona Ryder falling off that bike and eating shit. Dude, I was not expecting this movie to have an injury because it's such a cult classic in comedy, and really any Adam Sandler movie is, but for someone to get injured that wasn't Adam Sandler on the production of this movie is kind of insane to me because of just how insane some of these scenes were in this film, and also how some other actors just didn't get injured from just like falling down the stairs and suffering injuries. For those who haven't seen Mr. Deeds, Longfellow Deeds, played by Adam Sandler, is a humble small town guy who inherits a massive fortune from a distant relative. Thrown into the chaos of New York corporate life, he charms and frustrates everyone around him. Winona Ryder plays a reporter with The Secret, a lighthearted comedy about kindness in a greedy world. It's just one of those classic feel-good movies. There's not really like a super high-end plot to it, but most Adam Sandler movies have this great, like, charismatic lesson behind it, and it's just always a great thing to watch one of those rom-com or feel-good movies with Adam Sandler. Winona Ryder actually fractured her arm while filming a bike scene in Mr. Deeds, where she and Adam Sandler rode bikes around Central Park, and it was this nice little montage that was taking place. She ended up falling off the bike in one of the scenes and breaking her arm in 3 places. It's not funny, okay? It's not funny. I think what's interesting about it is we've covered so many injuries in this list of this part that are like bad injuries. Even if they're mild, they're bad, and they like happened in a bad way. And this is like one of those like funny ones because it's off something you wouldn't expect. Someone falling off a bike and fracturing their arm in 3 places is a lot different than a tiger ripping apart a 9-year-old, but that's just me. Despite the injury, Winona Ryder continued filming, wearing a hidden cast in between takes to keep the camera out of view of, you know, the injury. The injury obviously required medical attention, but production went on, and she completed her scenes while managing the injury very discreetly. And I gotta give props to her, because people who took other injuries, you know, they went out and they recovered and they took time and they halted production. But Winona was like, wow, I'm dedicated to the craft. I'm a strong woman. Let's film this movie and let's wrap this up. All right, we're down to the final 3. It is now nighttime, and as you can tell, I am quite exhausted. I'm gonna keep pushing. You can probably see that it was once very daylight out for a couple days, and now it's gloomy. Yeah. Next we have Back to the Future Part 2, made in 1989. Marty and Doc travel to the future, and then back to a dangerously altered past. They encounter new technology, old enemies, and complicated timelines. The stakes are higher, and paradoxes are crazier. It's a smart, fast-paced sequence movie, and it's a good sequel, because a lot of times people make a first one, it's really great, try to make a second one, and it just doesn't really hit the mark. And the third one is usually better than the second one, but I would say Back to the Future, like I've said, did a really good job of making 1, 2, and 3 very eventful. So this like stunt is like not main character related at all, and it's a little more niche. The person's name is Cheryl Wheeler, and it's a hoverboard accident. She actually fell off a hoverboard. Cheryl Wheeler Dixon, she's performing a hoverboard stunt as part of Bliff's gang, which involved crashing through a window while being swung on wires. And during the stunt, a crew member accidentally cut her safety wire while she was hanging outside the window, and she fell about 30 feet onto the concrete below, sustaining severe injuries including a shattered face and a broken right wrist requiring extensive reconstructive surgery. The footage of her hitting a pillar and falling is visible in the final cut of the film. And just because someone is a side character in a movie doesn't mean that something bad can't happen to them either.
But then you did have a very serious accident. What is it, 1989?
Long time ago, Back to the Future Part 2. And we were on a hoverboards. We were doing a hoverboard sequence on wires, and long story short, the effects guy released me at the wrong time off the cable, and I fell 20 feet to the concrete, broke my broke my face. I had a lot of reconstructive surgeries to my face, one to my arm. Yeah, I was pretty messed up.
How long did it take you to recover?
A couple of years. I mean, I was back to work doing easy jobs in a year, but I still had subsequent surgeries, so it was a mess.
Did you have fears of going back and doing more?
You know, my first real job back, I was hanging 200 feet off of a cable on General Hospital, off of a hotel building, and so it was kind of like, get back on the horse, get back on the cable. And I got through it, and I've never stopped since.
And now we go to the last one. And the last one of this list is just more iconic than crazy. A lot of people know it, and a lot of people talk about it. And it's one of those broken bones, or broken feet, I should say, that is just an interesting moment. And I'm talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, made in 2002. Frodo and Sam continue toward Mount Doom with Gollum as their guide. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli assist Rohan in their battle against Saruman's army. Half y'all are gonna tell me like, bro, you didn't pronounce that right. I know. Meanwhile, Merry and Pippin form an unexpected alliance. It's the middle chapter of a grand epic journey, notable in the series alone. So the most notable bone injuries from The Lord of the Rings is when Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn, broke his toe while kicking an orc helmet during the scene where Aragorn discovers a pile of burned corpses. The genuine pain in his scream was kept in the final film, adding to the scene's emotional intensity. And Orlando Bloom, who played Legolas, fractured a rib after falling off a horse during filming. Again, another horse fall. They're not that easy to recover from. Lastly, we have Brett Beatty, Gimli's scale double, dislocated his knee while running alongside Morrison and Bloom in the intense Rohan chase sequence. Kinda nuts, but the most notable one is the one of kicking the helmet, because that actual pain being visibly shown on camera in the blood-curdling scream of getting that intensive of an injury is kind of insane to keep in a film. I mean, we've seen a lot of moments like the Django Unchained one with Leonardo DiCaprio, where it was like, oh, this was like an interesting injury, let's keep it in the film. But this was like, oh, one of our actors got injured and screamed out of real pain. Let's keep that in. And that just kind of ends with a dark undertone of like the pain that actors went through to encapsulate like a memory and emotion in a scene was kept when they actually felt true pain. Instead of like trying to act it out and trying to make it better, the directors saw the real version better than the acting version, obviously, because it's more real and the audience will believe it more. But it's like this dark, weird undertone of like, I would like to publicize this actor going through immense pain in order to make this film feel more real when it's like this mystical movie already to begin with. So just kind of a weird thing to think about on that note of just like actors going through and enduring pain when like maybe they just could have not used that take. I don't know. That is going to be part one of the film and TV iceberg. I want to let people know that we are 6 tiers down from a 23 tier list. I want people to understand that I didn't want to make this entire video like one giant video because, again, channel's a little bit new. I kind of want people to, acclimate themselves, and I'm going to be posting longer content. And I didn't know if I could post a like 4 to 6 hour, or even 6 to 12 hour video all about this stuff. If people are really interested and they really like all the videos together, I will want to work towards compiling all the parts and series together in sort of this like remastered version, adding more footage and, more effects and really making it like its own video in itself. And also adding like a couple of bonus tiers so you don't feel like you're just getting all the videos combined into one. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this iceberg. If you did, make sure to drop a like and a comment, subscribe, consider subscribing. It really does help the channel. And yeah, that is it. I've been LDK. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out of here. See you guys.